We live in a time where being seen all the time is considered very important. Everywhere we look, people are showing what they do, sharing their thoughts, talking about their victories, and telling others what they plan to do next. The world today treats being visible like it's the same as being strong. But what if that's not true? What if showing off your strength is actually the fastest way to lose it? Niccolo Machiavelli, who many think was only about power and control, was also someone who paid close attention to how power really worked. What he noticed again and again was this: when someone tries too hard to show their strength, they end up being noticed for the wrong reasons. The ones who shine the brightest are often the first to be attacked. Real power doesn't need to be shouted. It doesn't need to be posted or proven with words. True strength is felt, quietly, deeply, often only when it's too late for others to stop it. Machiavelli lived in a time when staying quiet could keep you alive. In the city where he lived, showing off how powerful you were could lead to danger. Back then, power wasn't something you wore like a shiny medal. It was something you kept hidden, like a sharp tool under your coat. He watched how people who bragged too much ended up in trouble. Kings lost their crowns because they couldn't stop themselves from showing off. Machiavelli saw the pattern. When you display your strength too loudly, it becomes easy to break. The person in the room with the most real power is never the one making all the noise. It's the one who stays quiet, watches everything, and waits, while others talk too much and give themselves away. But today, we often do the opposite. Before we even begin a project, we tell the internet all about it. We post our wins as they happen. We show our feelings, our goals, and our personal lives to the world, hoping it makes us more real. But what many people call being open, Machiavelli would call a mistake that puts your plans in danger. You see, both in politics and in everyday life, those who talk too much become easy to figure out. And once people know exactly what to expect from you, it becomes easier for them to bring you down. Machiavelli once said something very important. Most people only see what you seem to be, but very few truly understand who you are inside. That wasn't a tip, it was a warning. When you show too much, others begin to judge. When you reveal too much, you open the door to criticism and attacks. The more you explain yourself, the easier it becomes for others to label you, challenge you, or even take advantage of what you've shared. In places where power is at play, staying mysterious isn't a weakness, it's a type of protection. Think about the loud person who's always bragging about their next big idea before anything's even happened. Watch closely. You'll often see that their ideas get copied, interrupted, or blocked by others. Or picture the person who talks the most in a meeting, always needing to speak first. They might seem important, but others quietly begin to lose respect for them. Now, imagine someone who doesn't say much, but every word and action they take is clear and thoughtful. People naturally adjust to their presence. They don't need to shout. They stand out because of how they carry themselves. Why does this happen? Because every time you speak, you are making a promise. Every time you announce something, you're showing where you stand, what you're planning, and what you're carrying. And the moment you do that, others begin preparing ways to stop you, outsmart you, or beat you at your own game. Machiavelli knew something simple but powerful. Being underestimated is safer than being celebrated. The clever fox doesn't survive because it talks about how smart it is. It survives because it moves quietly and no one sees what it's planning. The lion doesn't need to roar all the time. Its silence is what makes others nervous. But today, the world teaches us something different. We're told that we need to be loud to matter, that to be a leader, we have to speak more, that to be important, we have to show everything. But here's something Machiavelli understood very well. The more of yourself you show to the world, the more people expect from you. And if you can't keep giving them what they want, they'll remember. The more visible you are, the more pressure you carry. Silence, on the other hand, gives you space. It lets you move freely without having to explain yourself all the time. And this isn't just a nice idea. It's something deeply connected to how our minds work. People aren't afraid of what they fully understand. They're afraid of what they can't predict. When your actions are always public, when your plans and thoughts are always visible, you become something others can control. But when you stay calm, quiet, and careful, others have to guess what you're thinking. And in that guessing, they often reveal more about their own fears and weaknesses than you ever reveal about yourself. If Machiavelli saw the way people today try to prove their worth by always being seen and praised, he would be deeply worried. Not because he thought ambition was bad, but because he knew how fragile ambition becomes when it's exposed too early. He once wrote something powerful. The promise you made yesterday was needed then, but breaking it might be necessary today. That doesn't mean he liked lying. It means he understood how life changes. The words you've said in the past can become heavy chains. When you tell the world who you are too early, it becomes harder to grow into something new. People will expect you to stay the same, and if you change, they'll think you're weak. But silence gives you room to grow. It allows you to shift, to change, to become better without needing to say sorry. The people who truly understand power know that it's not about always doing more or saying more. It's about knowing when not to. Picture two fighters. One steps into the battle arena and shouts that he will win before the fight even starts. The crowd gets excited. He lifts his sword with confidence. The other walks in without saying a word. He looks directly at his rival, moves quietly, and speaks through his silence. Now ask yourself, who feels more dangerous? We're not afraid of noise. We're afraid of what we can't figure out. That's the truth people today need to remember. When you show off your wealth, your body, your romantic life, or your goals, you may feel powerful, like you're making others admire or fear you. But in reality, you're giving away information. You're pointing out your weak spots. You're inviting jealousy, opposition, and trouble. Even worse, you begin to teach yourself to depend on the approval of others. Machiavelli once warned, if you have to pick between being liked or being feared, fear is the safer choice. But fear doesn't come from yelling or bragging. It comes from being unknown. The desire to be liked can slowly destroy you. Because the moment your sense of worth depends on how others see you, you give up your freedom. You start acting for applause, not for purpose. You follow attention, not direction, and the power you thought you had begins to fade. So what can you do instead? Become quiet, be hard to read, work without broadcasting, only speak when your words actually matter. Let what you accomplish speak louder than your announcements. This isn't about being afraid, it's about being in charge of what people believe about you, in charge of how much your rivals understand, in charge of where your life is going. Machiavelli didn't tell people to hide because of fear. He said to show only what helps you move forward. He knew real influence isn't about being visible, it's about being unforgettable in a quiet, focused way. So next time you feel the urge to prove yourself, share your next step, or show off what you've built, pause for a second and ask, who is this helping? You, or someone who might use it against you? Remember, the strongest forces in nature don't make noise. Gravity, time, and pressure shape the world, and they do it in silence. Be like them, still, focused, sharp, quiet. If someone talks before they act, they give enemies time to prepare. They give their competition something to study. They become a path, clear, easy to follow, and no longer a threat. And once people can predict you, they can control you. Machiavelli understood this deeply. His words weren't just about politics. They were instructions for understanding how people think and react. He knew that power doesn't start by controlling others. It begins with managing yourself. And at the core of that self-control is one key ability: knowing when to hold back. Why do people feel the need to show off? Because they want to feel safe. They want to feel seen. They want proof that they are valuable. The Machiavellian way of thinking doesn't chase approval or seek to be liked. It looks for advantage. And there is no greater advantage in difficult situations than remaining silent by choice. Not the kind of silence that comes from fear or hesitation, but the kind that is calm, thoughtful, and filled with quiet strength. If you pay attention to the way power works across different parts of life, you'll notice a pattern. The higher someone rises, the less they talk. The more powerful their presence becomes, the fewer words they use. And when they do speak, people listen closely. Not because their words are loud, but because the silence before them made those words feel important. People just starting out feel the need to explain everything. But those with real experience and quiet confidence explain very little. They don't have to. Machiavelli once wrote that it's not the title that gives honor to a man, but the man who gives honor to the title. And that respect comes from self-control. True power is built not only through silence, but also through steady behavior, through calm expression, and through managing your emotional reactions. People who always try to impress are easy to upset. They fall into every trap, take every insult personally, and show all their feelings for others to use against them. But the person who thinks like Machiavelli stays steady. They don't argue just to win. They don't speak just to be heard, because they're not aiming for attention. They're aiming for position. Think about the people you know who truly shape what happens around them. Are they the ones making the most noise? Or are they the ones whose silence makes everyone else stop and wonder? This is the secret of being quietly powerful. When you don't reveal everything, others begin to imagine who you are. And what they imagine is usually far stronger than what's real. When you become too visible, your power is limited by what people see. But when you stay just out of reach, their imagination makes you larger than life. That's why, in the past, kings often sat behind curtains and rulers only appeared on special occasions. Not because they were hiding, but because they knew that mystery builds respect. When people see you all the time, they stop being impressed. You become just another face in the crowd. In today's world, people break this rule every day. We share too much, hoping to be seen, hoping to be praised. We confuse silence with weakness and think that being private means you're hiding something. But that's why so many people are ignored, because they don't understand the quiet strength of mystery. Machiavelli warned us a long time ago that people judge more by what they see than by what is actually done. That means if you show too much of the process, the effort, the doubt, the mistakes, you make your success look smaller. A magician who tells everyone how the trick works loses the magic. The more you talk about your victories, the less powerful they feel. Every word you use to defend your success takes away some of its impact. Every little detail you explain gives others a chance to pull it apart. And every time you brag, you shift the focus from what you did to how much you want attention. The person who is truly disciplined, the one who understands Machiavelli, doesn't brag about their wins. They build more of them quietly. They allow others to guess, to wonder, to talk about what they might be doing. And the more people wonder, the more they admire. That admiration creates power, and that power grows without ever needing to be asked for. This isn't about hiding who you are. It's about being careful with how you are seen. There are moments when stepping forward is right, but those moments should be chosen on purpose, not craved out of insecurity. A lion doesn't roar all day. He watches. He waits. And when he does roar, it shakes the ground. The danger in showing off isn't just that it weakens your image, it slowly changes your behavior. Without noticing, you stop doing things for meaning and start doing them for applause. You begin choosing your clothes, your words, and your actions based on what will get a reaction, not on what truly matters. And one day, you wake up and realize you've become a copy of yourself, a performance of something you used to be. This is the trap of trying to be admired. The moment someone depends on their audience to feel important, they become controlled by that same audience. Machiavelli would have seen this clearly. He would say, "Don't try to impress the crowd, rise above it. Let people speak about you, let them wonder, but never let them know everything. Because once people can fully see who you are, they stop respecting and start measuring. They compare, they criticize, and little by little, the edge that made you powerful begins to fade. Mystery is the quiet shadow of true strength. And once you lose that shadow, you begin to lose your strength too. So how do you build that quiet strength that makes others pay attention even when you say nothing? You stop needing to prove yourself. You trade the urge to be seen for the focus to improve. You begin to act without trying to explain your every move. You begin to succeed without making a scene. You speak less, But everything you say has weight. And when you do this, people begin to notice, not because of the noise you made, but because of what you kept hidden. That's the silent strategy Machiavelli believed in. He didn't chase attention, he sought influence. And in a world where everyone is told to talk constantly, where every platform rewards shouting, the ones who choose silence become powerful in ways others can't understand. Real strength isn't found in people who beg for attention. It's found in those who don't need it. In a world that's always loud, the greatest power you can have is to remain still while others rush to speak. In places where power is real, every time someone brags, overshares, or reacts without thinking, they show parts of themselves they didn't need to reveal. They uncover their fears, their weaknesses, and how unsure they really are. Machiavelli saw this clearly. He saw leaders lose everything not because they were weak, but because they confused being noticed with being strong. They thought showing off was strategy. They thought talking louder meant they were in charge. But they were wrong. They were defeated by people who said little, listened more, and only acted when the time was right. To truly understand this, you must let go of the idea that being completely understood is always a good thing. It isn't. Sometimes, being mysterious is your greatest protection. The moment others feel they know exactly who you are, they stop being curious, they stop being cautious, and they start planning how to get ahead of you. Machiavelli didn't write for those who wanted to be popular. He wrote for those who wanted to stay powerful over time. And to do that, you must learn how to stay out of reach. He said wise people study the paths of those who came before them. And what did the most successful ones have in common? They understood the strength of hiding their moves. Think of Caesar, who crossed into battle without announcing it. Think of Borgia, who waited to speak until he had already cornered his enemies. Even Machiavelli himself shared his greatest teachings in stories and hints, not in loud speeches. The world has always punished people who reveal too much. But now, in our time, it's even worse. Today, we are watched not just by leaders or cameras, but by each other. And worst of all, we often give away our secrets ourselves. We share our personal struggles, our victories, our sadness, our hopes, all believing that this makes us strong, but it doesn't. It gives others more ways to judge us, to compare us, or to use what we've said against us. Once something is out in the open, you no longer control it. That's why Machiavelli would tell you to build quiet, guarded spaces in your own mind. Places where your deepest dreams and plans stay hidden. Where you don't talk about what you're building, you just build. Where no one sees the process until the final result speaks for itself. Those who work in silence create things that last. That's why builders don't show unfinished blueprints to critics. Why generals don't explain their battle strategy before a fight begins. Why great leaders don't ask for everyone's opinion before making a decision. Because when it comes to power, mystery is worth more than being exposed. What people can't see creates more tension than what they can. The words you don't say often shape people more than the ones you do. A powerful person doesn't just guide others. They decide what others are allowed to know. That's where many people make mistakes. They feel nervous and try to fill the silence. They feel unsure and speak to cover it up. They feel proud and rush to tell the world. But every time they do, they're teaching others how to understand them. They give away their pattern. But the person who holds real power knows how to pause. They learn to be okay with discomfort. They stay still when others expect them to move. They don't chase praise. They speak only when silence no longer serves them. This isn't a weak kind of silence. It's a silence built from choice. There's a difference between staying quiet because you're unsure and staying quiet because you're in control. A person who is simply quiet might be afraid, but someone who is unreadable is thinking, watching, guiding attention without needing to demand it. They let people wonder. And in that wondering, people project their own fears, dreams, and doubts. You become a reflection, and that reflection makes others confused in your favor. That's power. Look at the people in history who truly made a difference. Winston Churchill didn't talk all the time, but when he did, His words mattered. Marcus Aurelius didn't write to impress others. He wrote to understand himself. His wisdom stayed inside, quiet and strong. Even today, the best leaders in business speak less in meetings. They listen. They plan. They don't perform. They strategize. Machiavelli saw all this clearly. He knew charm fades, praise disappears, and being famous doesn't protect you for long. But a sharp mind that stays steady, quiet, and unreadable, that kind of mind is nearly impossible to break. So take a moment and ask yourself, in a world where everyone is acting for attention, what happens when you stop trying to be part of the performance? What happens when you no longer explain your choices to everyone? When you don't feel the need to show your process, when you quietly stop sharing your every step with the crowd? You gain space to think clearly, you gain the freedom to move wisely, and you gain the strength to stay in control. People start to speak about you instead of speaking to you. They guess, they wonder, they imagine things. And while they're busy doing that, you continue to move with quiet purpose, without waiting for anyone's approval. That's how real empires are built. Not by making noise, but by taking action in ways that can't be predicted. Not by craving applause, but by following a vision that doesn't get weaker under everyone's gaze. Machiavelli would tell you, if you want to rule without being blocked, you must first let go of the need to be constantly noticed. Let others chase attention. Let them talk too much and give themselves away. Let them wear themselves out in the spotlight. You stay in the shadows, not because you're afraid, but because you're building something too big to be seen early. And when people finally do notice, it will be too late to stop you. They won't understand how you got there, because you never made a show of it. You didn't brag. You didn't flash your strength. You didn't beg for their gaze. You simply acted. The most dangerous creatures aren't loud. The wolf doesn't make noise before it attacks. The snake doesn't warn before it strikes. The storm doesn't ask for permission. It just arrives. Machiavelli saw this again and again, in the stories of rulers, in the mistakes of kings, in the silence between battles. The most powerful message in all of his writing is this: silence, when used with wisdom, is sharper than any word. The opposite, constantly showing off, explaining everything, or performing for the crowd, is often what leads someone to lose everything. But today, we are surrounded by noise. People post updates every hour, share their every emotion, show every step of their lives to the world. We live in a time where everyone is performing all the time. But what most don't realize is that performing isn't the same as being powerful. In fact, pretending to have power is often a way to cover up the fact that you don't. People who truly have strength don't need to talk about it, because the moment you try to prove something, you quietly admit that you're unsure it's real. Why is showing off so risky? Because it invites attention, and not the kind you want. It tells others exactly where to aim. It reveals your location before your plan is safe. And in Machiavelli's eyes, that kind of mistake is not just foolish, it's dangerous. He once said that a wise person does immediately what a foolish one does too late. And what does the foolish one do? He reveals himself. He demands to be noticed. He begs to be seen. And by doing that, he gives others everything they need to bring him down. The wise person does things differently. He acts quietly. He chooses his moments carefully. And sometimes the world doesn't even know what he did until it's already done. Make no mistake, this isn't about fear. This isn't the silence of someone hiding. This is the stillness of someone who doesn't need to explain. A silence so calm and unshaken that it can't be moved by opinions, trends, or noise. Because the person who constantly shows off has already given up his advantage. He has turned his personal strength into a performance for others. He needs people to cheer for him, agree with him, believe in him. And once he needs that, anyone can use it against him. Even worse, when you perform for others, you stop being in control of your timing. You don't move when it's best. You move when people are watching. You stop acting with strategy. and start reacting for applause. And the most dangerous thing of all is that you start thinking, attention is the same as success. That's how great dreams fall apart. Not because they were opposed, but because they were shared too soon. The idea is exposed before it's ready. The plan is revealed just to get compliments. The goal is spoken out loud and judged before it even exists. In Machiavellian thinking, this is called making a promise too early, and it's often fatal. You may think that being loud is the same as being confident, but Machiavelli would disagree. Real confidence is quiet. It moves with care and power. It doesn't ask people to believe. It commands respect simply by existing. Think about how this works in leadership. The leader who talks too much, who explains every move, who replies to every critic. He may seem open, but he doesn't seem powerful. The leader who speaks only when necessary, who listens more than he speaks, who keeps more than he shares. That leader holds a different kind of presence. His words are heavier because they are fewer. And that's no accident. That's intentional. Silence raises value. The more you speak when it's not needed, the more your value drops. The person who constantly justifies himself lowers his own worth. The one who keeps mystery alive raises it. This same idea works in negotiation. The person who speaks first gives up ground. The more you explain, the more you give away. But if you can sit quietly, even when it's uncomfortable, if you can wait and listen, others will eventually reveal their cards. They will speak too much. They will show you their worries. And they will guess at your strength while you remain unknown. Machiavelli didn't just study politics. He studied human behavior. He understood something simple but powerful. People become uneasy when they face something they can't figure out. And that discomfort pushes them to speak too quickly, act without thinking, and give away their secrets in the process. All you have to do is stay calm, hold your place, and let them unravel themselves while trying to understand you. So ask yourself honestly, when you share your dreams online, when you talk about what you're working on, when you reveal details about your personal life, your success, or your next step, who is it really for? Is it because it moves you forward, or because it makes you feel seen? Is it to lead, or to feel safe? Because the person who needs to be noticed will always be under the control of whoever is watching, but the person who sees everything and says very little becomes untouchable. That's why the silence Machiavelli spoke of is so rare, because it requires strength. It asks you to rise above the craving for attention. It invites you to find your confidence not by being recognized, but by being impossible to fully understand. What's hidden makes people cautious. What's expected is easy to defeat. So you must decide what you want to be. And remember, power isn't just about what you do. It's also about what others believe you might do. And if they don't know your next move, if they can't plan for it, or even describe it, they pause. And in that pause, you win. It's not the person putting on a show who takes the crown. It's the quiet figure in the background, the one who only steps into view once the outcome has already been decided, the one who's already 10 steps ahead before a word is spoken. Machiavelli wouldn't tell you to disappear. He'd tell you to act with purpose, to let people believe you're playing a simple game when you're playing a far more complex one. He'd tell you to smile kindly while keeping track of everything, to nod politely while staying sharp, and to speak only after your silence has shaped the entire room. That is the power of not showing off. That is the power of presence without performance. Say nothing. Watch everything. Move only when it brings you closer to victory. If there's one pattern behind every fall from greatness, every lost throne, every broken legacy, it's this. They allowed too many people to see too much, too early. Machiavelli knew that influence, like precious metal, becomes less valuable when it's scattered everywhere. The person who's always showing themselves, always speaking, always putting their plans on display, becomes ordinary. They flood the world with their own image. And once you're everywhere, you lose your meaning. You're no longer rare, you're background noise. You cannot be deeply respected and overly familiar at the same time. Machiavelli once said that rulers must learn how not to be good, but what he also meant is this: They must learn how not to be available. A true leader should be known by what they accomplish, not by what they explain. They should be felt when they're gone, not followed step by step. Their presence should carry weight even when they're not in the room. And that kind of presence doesn't come from shouting louder. It comes from choosing your words with care. Every time you choose visibility over mystery, you trade away something rare. You trade away mystique. Mystique isn't the result of hiding, it's the result of wisdom. It comes from holding back, from staying focused, from only revealing what helps your goal and nothing more. It is power protected by precision. Look at great actors on stage, the ones who know that a moment of stillness, a pause, even a glance, can speak louder than 1,000 words. And life works the same way. The person who breaks the silence has the power to guide the moment. The one who listens longer sees more clearly. And the one who waits, while others rush to speak, gains ground while everyone else gives it away. This isn't just a clever trick. It's a way of seeing the world. To Machiavelli, every conversation, every decision, every step was part of a quiet competition for control. And in that competition, making noise is often your biggest weakness. Letting your emotions spill out can be a weakness too. But the greatest danger is needing to be admired. Because once you depend on praise, you become addicted to being seen. And when you start performing for approval, you stop moving with strength. You confuse being watched with being respected. But the person who grows in silence is not only more effective, they are harder to stop, because no one sees them coming. They are the silent builder, the quiet planner, the one who observes while others shout, the one who studies every piece, waits patiently, and when the time is perfect, acts with such accuracy that people call it brilliance. But it was never luck. It was focus. It was calm. It was self-control. And that level of control makes people afraid, not because it's loud, but because it's unpredictable. You can't fight something you can't see clearly. You can't prepare for something that's invisible. You can't defeat a person you don't understand. That is how fear works. And Machiavelli understood that deeply. He wrote that it is far safer to be feared than to be loved, because love is given freely, but fear must be built carefully. And one of the key ingredients in creating fear is this: uncertainty. When people can't predict your next step, they hesitate. When they don't understand how your mind works, they hold back. And when they feel there's a strong presence behind your silence, they naturally give you space, a distance they don't dare to cross. This is the strange truth about modern communication. The more we tell, the less we're respected. Because sharing often feels nice. It feels close. It feels sincere. But real strength isn't about feeling good in the moment. It's about staying solid for a long time. And to do that, you must learn to stay quiet when others are speaking, to protect your thoughts when others are confessing, and to act without letting the world know beforehand. Above all, you must realize that not every truth needs to be spoken aloud. There's a big difference between being open and being exposed. Machiavelli would tell you, only show what strengthens your position. Only share what helps you move forward. And never confuse being open with being powerful. Because while you're explaining your plans, someone else, someone quiet and watchful, is studying you, learning how to use your honesty as a weapon. They won't interrupt. They won't challenge you directly. They'll just wait and smile. And the moment you relax, the moment you're focused on getting approval, they'll strike. That's the cold reality of real power. It doesn't make noise, it doesn't rush, and it never begs to be seen. So ask yourself clearly, do you want to be noticed or do you want to succeed? Because very often, you cannot have both. The person who gets attention too soon becomes a symbol, and symbols are easy to attack. The one who builds loudly invites sabotage. The person who lives for praise starts changing his path just to keep it. But the one who is fine with being invisible, who doesn't need to be praised, who moves quietly in the background, that person becomes something different, a quiet force, a presence behind the scenes that leads and wins without needing to be known. Machiavelli never chased fame. He studied it. He used it when needed, but he never saw it as the goal, because he understood what many forget. Fame can trap you. It makes you act like the version of yourself that others expect, even if that version is far from what makes you strong. The world will keep telling you to be louder, to be everywhere, to be impossible to ignore. But those who understand the deeper game know that the more visible you become, the more people start to watch you too closely. And once they watch you too closely, they begin to pull you apart. That's why you should always think carefully about what you reveal. Be thoughtful about what you choose to show, because someone who depends on attention might impress the crowd, but he will never be the one directing the game. And Machiavelli never wrote for the crowd. He wrote for the strategist, for the leader, for the quiet mind that knows the deepest truth. Power doesn't live in what people can see. It lives in what they can't. Fear doesn't come from loud voices. It comes from uncertainty. The most powerful people don't dominate with noise. They shape the room by watching it. They don't give away everything they know. They keep what matters hidden. They don't seek applause. They take action where no one is looking. Machiavelli saw this again and again, in palaces, in governments, on battlefields, and behind closed doors. The ones who lasted, who held true power, were not performers. They were quiet thinkers who planned their steps without needing anyone to clap for them. And that's the warning he leaves for anyone who wants to win. Showing off isn't just unwise. It shows a deep misunderstanding of how power really works. People cheer for the ones who sparkle, but the person who lasts, the one who holds true influence, is the one who understands that every moment spent in the spotlight has a cost. And what is that cost? It's being exposed. It's being predictable. It's being easy to strike. And for someone who thinks like Machiavelli, those are risks you never take unless you are absolutely sure the reward is worth it. These days, many people live as if their lives were always on stage. They show every feeling, share every opinion, and announce every dream. But revealing everything about yourself isn't a sign of strength. It's an act of giving up control. When you tell others what you're aiming for, they may laugh at you. When you explain your method, they might take it and use it for themselves. When you show your success, others may start to plan how to take it from you. Every small piece of truth you give away becomes something others can judge, copy, or use to slow you down. But when you stay quiet, when you protect your thoughts and plans, you hold a quiet kind of power. Because if people can't define you, they can't stop you. If they don't see the move coming, they can't block it. And if they don't know your strengths, they can't tear them apart. That isn't hiding. That's being intentional. The world will often tell you to be open about everything, but Machiavelli would tell you to be careful. The world says to always be real and express yourself. But Machiavelli says it's better to be wise with what you show and when. People say it's important to be liked. Machiavelli says it's more important to be respected, and if necessary, even feared, when that respect is what keeps you in control. And respect doesn't come from big speeches or emotional moments. It comes from showing discipline, being steady, and using your strength only when it truly matters. Being unseen is not your weakness. Being ignored is. But no one ignores what they can't quite figure out, and many will overlook what's already too familiar. So let them think they know you while you quietly grow beyond what they expect. Let them guess while you build something they can't predict. Machiavelli taught that leaders sometimes need to appear good without always being good, because in his view, appearances were not reflections. They were tools. You don't owe the world every part of yourself. What you owe the world is what you can accomplish. And real results don't need fancy packaging. They don't need long explanations. They speak on their own, louder than any words could. If you want to create something that lasts, learn to move without making noise. Build quietly. Succeed quietly. And when you do speak, speak rarely, with purpose, and let your voice carry the weight of everything you've kept inside. That's how words become powerful. not by how often they're spoken, but by how meaningful they are when they finally arrive. The person who brags may get attention for a moment, but the one who stays silent may end up shaping the world. Because real legacy isn't made by being loud. It's created by steady motion, calm, intentional, and impossible to stop. The greatest rulers in history weren't chosen by crowds. They rose to power by making decisions that shaped everything, without explaining themselves to people who wouldn't understand. You don't have to be well known. You don't have to be popular. You don't need to be liked. What you need is to be effective. And effectiveness begins when the need to be noticed ends. So step back from the spotlight. Let go of the need to prove yourself. Watch your words. Let go of pride. And focus your attention on what actually matters. Not on how you're seen, but on what kind of impact you leave behind. When your quiet presence makes more noise than others shouting, you've already won. When your decisions are felt in places you've never even been, you've already won. When people realize they've been following your lead without ever seeing the full picture, you've already won. That is the last and quietest kind of victory. And that is what Machiavelli wanted you to understand before the noise of the world drowned him out. If you've made it this far, something inside you has already begun to shift. Some part of you is tired of all the noise, tired of constantly explaining yourself, tired of feeling like you need permission to be powerful. And now, something deeper inside is waking up. You're starting to see that being admired means nothing if it requires you to become predictable. That the deepest kind of respect begins when you stop reshaping yourself just to please others. So I ask you, are you ready to be misunderstood, even disliked, because you chose to be smart instead of loud? Are you ready to walk a quieter road, knowing it might feel colder, lonelier, but it leads to real power? If this message stirred something inside you, if you felt something shift, write in the comments, I move in silence. Let's see how many of you are finished with pretending and ready to begin something real.